الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين صدق الله العظيم. Last week we spoke about some of the needs of our ruh, our soul, that are necessary for a person to progress spiritually. And one of the points that we discussed in detail was mujahada. Another point that was left to discuss from the needs that were mentioned was company of the Shaykh, and to be in the company of the pious. This company of the Shaykh, company of the pious, is something which is extremely important and sometimes it's overlooked. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, many places He tells us to adopt taqwa, to obtain taqwa. Right? And wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or in many places where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to obtain taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also tells us how we can obtain that taqwa. So in one place in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah. O believers, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, adopt taqwa. And then He tells us one method how to adopt taqwa, and He says, وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ, and be with the sadiqun. Sadiqun over here, the Mufassirun mentioned that it refers to the pious. Sadiqun is salihun. That if you be with the pious, then this will help you obtain taqwa. Company of the pious, very important. We see that even the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, despite being at the highest pedestal of Tazkiyah, at the highest level of spiritual progress, even they were told to spend time in the company of, you can say, those others who are pious as well. Obviously, the Nabi is the most pious individual of their time, but they were told to spend time in the company of other pious of their time. We look at Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to go and spend time with Khidr alayhi salatu wasalam. Even though Musa alayhi salam was, the Nabi, and he was more virtuous, but in one aspect, you can say Khidr alayhi salatu wasalam had some virtue, so he was told to go spend time with him so you can learn from him. Right? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He commanded him in the Quran, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. That O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, spend time in the company of those people who مع الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي. Those people who call upon their Lord in the mornings and the evenings. Meaning, oh, go and spend time with those Sahaba who are busy remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all day. Not because they were more virtuous than Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but this is, as you can say, something that the Ummah can learn. That if Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being told to go and spend time in the company, go and sit with those Sahaba who are engaged in dhikrullah and the remembrance of Allah the entire day, at all times of the day, that means that we are even in more need of this thing, right? That we spend time in the company of the pious. So companies are very important, and it is through company that a person is able to obtain that which they cannot acquire through other means. And sometimes we feel that, I don't need to sit in company. Or sometimes some people, this thought comes to their mind in reality, that, if I find someone who is of that caliber of piety, then I will go and spend time in their company. I'm going to go and look for a Junaid Baghdadi of this time. I'm going to go and look for Imam Ghazali of this time. You're not going to find any Imam Ghazali, you're not going to find any Junaid Baghdadi in this day and age. Look at the disciples of Junaid Baghdadi and Imam Ghazali, who they were, and then look at ourselves. Are we even, do we level up with the disciples of those people? No. So how can we expect to have Shaykh, Mashayikh, who are of the caliber of those Shuyukh who pass? Right? So, at every time there's some kind of digression in the level, but there's still pious people out there. And every time and age, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created pious people. He has made pious people who we can go and spend time in their company, sit with them, and benefit from their company. And just sitting in the company of the pious is beneficial. We see that even in the lives of our pious predecessors, that even after they themselves became mashayikh, they would still go and sit in the company of other mashayikh, of other pious people. They themselves had a lot of disciples, spiritual disciples. But whenever they got the opportunity, they would go and sit in the company of other mashayikh and other pious people. Why? Because they know that every person has this need, and by sitting in their company, then this is also a means of a person's, you can say, spiritual cleansing that takes place through this. Right? So this is a very important point that we learn from our pious predecessors, from Mashayikh, from even when we look at the life of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, that they would always go and spend time in the company of the pious people. And whenever we read the biographies of our pious predecessors, whoever they were, the Sahaba, the Tabi'un, Tabi'un, the great Mufassirun, Muhaddithun, Fuqaha, then one thing we always will see that this so and so person spent these many years in the company of this person. He spent these many years in the company of this ustad or this sheikh of his, right? And they would spend many years. So not just sitting in the company sometimes, but for an extended period of time as much as a person can. The longer time, the more extended time a person spends in the company for pious doesn't mean in one go, but go on a regular basis, every week or every month or whenever a person gets a chance, go and spend some time and create this connection with the pious people. When you slowly sit with them more and more and more for a longer time, then you are able to learn a lot from them. And this mulazamat, this extended amount of time that a person will spend in the company of the pious, the extended time, this is what brings about more benefit. That is why they would spend 10, 15, 20 years in the company of their mashayikh, and then they would benefit from them and learn from them, and this would benefit them in all ways. So in this day and age, also, we should try and spend time in the company of the pious. Sometimes what happens, and I'll end with this, that when we look to okay, I need to spend time in the company of some knowledgeable people. So we go and look for people who are famous. We go and look for people who can talk very well. We go and look for people who are well known, who are famous personalities. But that's not what benefits a person. What benefits is the heart, right? The internal. If someone cannot speak very well, they are not very famous. They may not be, like at a celebrity level, but at the end of the day, they are someone who spent time in the company of another pious individual for a long time, and that person's company will benefit us much more than someone who may be who may be very eloquent at speaking, or someone who may be very famous, right? So we should always look at the heart of the individual, and to use our best judgment in this regard, because at the end of the day, this is what affects an individual. And there were some of the pious people that when they would sit, they wouldn't say anything. They would just sit there, and people would go and sit in their company and not even hear one word, but this would be life changing for them, right? Because company matters. And we also understand this when we look at the word Sahaba. Why were Sahaba? Because they spent time in the company of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They were with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So company is very important, and pious company, and that. So this is one important lesson that we can take back with us today, inshallah. To try and spend time in the company of the pious whenever we get a chance, however long we are able to, whether it is a few moments, whether it is a couple of hours, whether it is a few days, or whenever we get an opportunity, we hear about some pious person who is in our locality, go and spend time and listen to them and sit in their company, and inshallah we will benefit from this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give importance to this aspect of our